Okay, imagine this. You need to get one video source showing perfectly on dozens of screens, maybe even hundreds. Think a live game in a sports bar, or maybe a big corporate presentation across multiple floors, or even just, getting a movie playing throughout a really ambitious smart home setup. And the catch, it has to look perfect everywhere, totally in sync, and you absolutely cannot end up with that spaghetti monster of tangled, expensive, specialized cables. Sounds like a nightmare, right? Like something needing a huge budget and a team of AV experts. Well, today, we're doing a deep dive into something that honestly makes this whole challenge surprisingly simple. We're talking about network HDMI over CAT6 splitters. Specifically, we're going to unpack the WolfPack 1080p system. This isn't just another gadget, it feels more like a fundamental shift in how we can approach distributing video. So our mission today, we want to really explore how this clever tech lets you send a single 1080p HDMI signal out to potentially hundreds of displays. And get this up to 300 feet away, just using standard CAT6 network cables, the kind you might already have in your walls. We'll look at not just what it does, but really why it's such a leap forward. Okay, let's dig in. First off, let's just acknowledge the usual headaches. I mean, if you've ever tried running a standard HDMI cable more than, 25, maybe 30 feet, you know the pain. The signal starts to flicker or maybe drops out completely, especially with higher resolutions. It gets tricky fast. And if you need to go further or connect to lots of screens, you're suddenly looking at signal boosters, active cables, maybe even fiber, or just this messy chain of extenders. It gets complex, expensive, and just adds more things that could potentially fail. It can be a real logistical mess for bigger setups.
Oh, absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head. HDMI, fundamentally, it's designed for short runs, like, your Blu-ray player to your TV, right there in the same room. The signal itself carries a ton of data, but because it's electrical, it just naturally weakens over distance. Attenuation, right? So when you try to push it past its limits, you're basically fighting physics. And those active boats you mentioned, the boosters, repeaters, yeah, they exist, but often they become these kind of proprietary boxes that don't scale well. Plus, every repeater can add a tiny bit of delay, a bit of latency, and it's another point where things can go wrong. This is exactly the gap that a robust network-based system like the WolfPack fills. It offers something standardized, scalable, and frankly just more elegant than trying to force HDMI over long distances.
Right, and this is where it gets really interesting for me. Instead of wrestling with those pricey, specialized HDMI cables or fiber optics, this system uses something most modern buildings already have tons of: standard KP6 network cables. I remember trying to extend HDMI for my own home theater years ago. The signal drops, the thick, awkward cables. When I first heard about using KT6 for video, it almost sounded, well, too easy. What was stopping this before?
Yeah, that too good to be true feeling is understandable. Historically, I think people saw high-definition video and, regular network data as totally separate things. Different pipes needed different wires. The big hurdle was really finding a standard, reliable way to wrap up that high-def video signal into data packets, IP packets, that could travel smoothly over a normal network switch. And then, crucially, unpack it at the other end without noticeable delay or losing any quality. Sure, there were proprietary systems, but they tended to be expensive, locked you into one vendor, and were often pretty complex to set up. What's really game-changing here is this shift, moving AV distribution away from specialized cables towards a more IT-focused model. Think about it for businesses. This means their network infrastructure investments can pull double duty, supporting AV too. Less need for separate, costly AV wiring upgrades down the line.
So it's really about repurposing that CAT6 cable that's everywhere. What's the big deal about using CAT6 beyond just the cost saving, like from an infrastructure point of view?
Well, the significance is huge, actually. Economically, yes, KT6 is way cheaper per foot than long HDMI or fiber runs, especially installation costs. But it's more than just cost. It's about how common it is, how standardized it is. KT6 is already there, it's relatively easy to pull, and critically, it works perfectly with standard network switches.
Yeah.
So the WolfPack system isn't just a point-to-point solution. It can plug right into your existing local area network, your LAN. Imagine a big office building or a university campus network, ports everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly, any of those ports could potentially feed a high-def display using infrastructure that's already paid for. Minimal extra cabling needed. It's a really smart convergence of IT and AV systems.
Okay, that makes sense for a straightforward setup. But what if you're dealing with something really complex, like, say, a multi-story building with all sorts of different screens? Are there specific network setups or, like,
best practices to make sure everything runs smoothly with the WolfPack to avoid, signals bumping into each other?
Absolutely, and that's where the network approach really shines. For those bigger deployments, the best practice is usually to set up a dedicated VLAN, a virtual LAN.
Okay, a VLAN.
Yeah. Basically, you digitally fence off a part of your network just for the video traffic. This guarantees your video streams aren't fighting for bandwidth with email or web browsing or whatever else is happening on the main network. Keeps performance consistent. The WolfPack system, running on that dedicated network or VLAN, inherently simplifies this. It gives your video signals a clean, managed path, much more reliable than trying to manage a bunch of separate point-to-point extenders.
Got it. So that brings us to the how. How does this sort of magic actually work? Sending full 1080p HDMI over just a regular network cable. Let's break down the key parts of the WolfPack system. It sounds pretty simple once you see the pieces.
It really is quite elegant at its core. You've basically got two main components working together. First, there's the HDMI transmitter, the TX unit.
Okay, the TX.
Right. This is where your video source plugs in. Anything with a standard 1080p HDMI output could be a PC, a DVD player, camera, Roku, Apple TV, satellite box, you name it. You plug it into the TX. Now, this unit does the crucial job. It essentially acts like a video encoder. It takes that HDMI signal, compresses it a bit, and wraps it up into a stream of IP packets. Think similar to how video conferencing works, but optimized for that.
Ah, okay. So it digitizes it for the network.
Exactly. That's key for maintaining the signal quality and letting network switches handle the traffic properly. And importantly, each transmitter uses a static IP address.
Why static?
Well, in a fixed setup like this, you want predictable addresses. Makes it much easier to manage and troubleshoot, especially with lots of displays, rather than dealing with IPs that might change unexpectedly. Then at the other end, you have the receivers, the RX units.
RX for receiver. Got it.
Yep. One RX unit connects to each screen, your TV, monitor, projector, whatever. It takes those IP packets coming down the CAT6 cable, decodes them, and turns them back into a perfect HDMI signal that your display understands. And connecting them, super simple. A single CAT6 cable runs from the transmitter to each receiver. Now, for maybe just one or two screens, you might run a direct cable. But where this really scales up is using a standard network switch.
Right, like we talked about with a LAN.
Exactly. The TX plugs into the switch, and then each RX plugs into the switch too, using the network or that dedicated VLAN to distribute the signal. And the scalability here is pretty impressive. One single transmitter can technically pair with up to 253 receivers.
Wow, 253.
Yeah. Now, in practical terms, the documentation mentions splitting to maybe 47 TVs or monitors comfortably, but the potential is there for hundreds of displays. If you architect the network correctly using the full WolfPack distribution system, it's built to scale up as your needs grow.
That kind of reach is incredible.
Okay.
So beyond just sending HDMI or C86, what other features make these WolfPack splitters really stand out? What makes them powerful and, easy to use day to day? Let's get into the specifics.
Yeah, there are several key things. First and foremost, obviously, is the 1080p resolution support. It's not just ticking a box. It means the system is designed to reliably push that crisp, clear 1080p HD signal to every single screen without noticeable loss. Vital for detailed visuals. Tied right into that is the long-distance transmission. We mentioned up to 100 meters, about 328 feet, over C6. That's a huge advantage. It means you likely won't need those extra powered extenders or repeaters for most long runs, which simplifies wiring and cuts down on potential failure points. Then there's something critical but often overlooked, good EDID management.
Ah, ED, the bane of many AV setups.
Exactly. EDID extended display identification data is basically how your source device asks the screen, hey, what resolutions and audio formats can you handle? This system manages that communication effectively across all connected displays. Without good EDID handling, you'd be chasing ghosts, screens going black, wrong resolutions, weird aspect ratios. It ensures the source sends a signal that every display can actually use properly. Makes it much more plug and play.
Yeah, I've definitely battled EDID issues before. It's subtle, but so important for things just working. What about copy protection, like HDCP? Is that handled?
Good question. Yes, HDCP compliance is built right in. HDCP is the standard for protecting copyrighted content. Absolutely essential if you're using sources like streaming boxes, Roku, Apple TV, or Blu-ray players, even most cable boxes these days. Without HDCP compliance, you'd just get a black screen or an error trying to play protected movies or shows. So its inclusion means broad compatibility with pretty much any modern source. And then there's a really nice convenience feature, IR extension support.
Oh, infrared control. How does that work?
Yeah. It lets you control your source device, say your cable box, tucked away in a closet from the room where the TV is. You just point your regular source remote control at a little IR receiver sensor plugged into the RX unit by the TV. That signal gets sent back over this CT6 cable to an IR emitter placed near the source device. So you can change channels, pause, whatever, like you're standing right in front of it.
That's brilliant. No need to have the source device physically near the screen.
Exactly. Huge convenience factor, especially for clean installs where you want equipment hidden away. And finally, they really designed it for easy installation and setup. The goal was to avoid needing specialized tools or complicated software. It aims for a pretty straightforward plug-and-play experience, making it accessible even if you're not a pro AV installer. Saves time, saves labor costs.
Okay, so we've got the tech specs, the features, but let's pull back a bit. What does all this mean for you, the listener? If you're facing these kinds of